Ryan Harris joins us for this episode of The Active Code. Ryan is a lifelong physical activity enthusiast and has used his passion to create School of Play, where his team creates memories that will last a lifetime by keeping children active and engaged through sport, exercise and play. Ryan shares his journey, the people along the way that have supported his success, and how he leads his inspirational team. Enjoy the pod.
Hi and welcome to the Active Code podcast, brought to you by Aspire Active Partnerships. I'm Paul Griffiths, and joining me each week on the pod is Luke Johnson.
Aspire Active Partnerships is a community of like-minded business leaders who all believe that collaboration in the sports coaching and children's activity sector is essential for success. We've proven that working in collaboration does benefit business growth and essentially helps more children be more active more often.
To combat physical inactivity, we need organisations that are performing at their very best. Organisations will only operate to high standards if they are led well. If we can focus on developing high quality leaders throughout an organisation, not just at the top, customers will experience higher quality services, which means heightened enjoyment levels and increased levels of physical activity. And if we do this at an early age, we know that we can build the foundations for a more active, happier and healthier life. The Active Code investigates what it really takes to be a successful leader and how organisations can combat physical inactivity.
We won't be alone through this journey. We are joined by business owners and experts from our sector, as well as inspirational people from outside our industry. We'll understand the importance of physical activity to our guests, reflect on leadership experiences, and gain thought-provoking insights on how we can crack the Active Code and get more children more active more often. If you like what you hear, please leave us a rating and subscribe.
Ryan Harris, welcome to the Active Code podcast.
Thank you for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure.
The pleasure is all ours, Ryan. What we tend to do at the start of every episode is ask the guest to talk a bit more about their professional journey. So could you share that with the listeners, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So first role I had in my career actually was as like a kids activity club provider at David Lloyd's. So I'm sure you're familiar with David Lloyd Leisure Centres. When I was 17, I started working there because I played tennis there from a young age and had a few contacts. To this day, I've never actually done a job interview myself. I was just given that job really. So yeah, first role there, doing holiday camps, multi-sport kind of activities with children there. Went to uni, but decided it wasn't quite for me and ended up leaving after a couple of years. And then when I came back, I always had the fallback of tennis because I'd played tennis from a young age to quite a high standard. I knew that was always an option for me, so fell back onto that really when I came back from uni and did my coaching badges and started coaching at David Lloyd as well. And then just by sort of the off chance really, I emailed the old primary school that I went to. I emailed the head teacher because it was still the same head teacher about going in and doing tennis. And that was the first time I worked in a school really. I think I was about 20, I think I was 20 at the time. So went in there just doing an hour after school of tennis actually. But it was a really good session with loads of kids on it. I think we had like 30 kids every so for probably about 9 months, 10 months. And it just clicked in my head. I was like, I'm coaching tennis, but that was mostly in the evenings and then weekends because obviously people want tennis lessons when they're not in work. So I had all this time in the day where I wasn't really doing much. So I thought, why not just start ringing some schools and seeing if they want some tennis sessions? And I basically offered it for free initially. And I think I actually did a LinkedIn post about offering things for free yesterday. And I think if I didn't do that, I don't think the business would have really ever taken off because it sort of got my foot in the door really at a lot of schools. And so over like a 2 or 3 month period when I made the decision to make a lot of calls to local primary schools, I ended up getting in, I think, about 11 or 12 schools. And I was actually doing it with another guy at the time, another tennis coach. And we ended up, maybe about a year into it, we ended up going our separate ways and splitting everything down the middle, if you like. And then from there, sort of felt we started doing other activities. I thought, well, I don't do basketball. I think that was the first activity we did. So hired a coach, and on reflection, I was very naive at the time. I think at that point, it still wasn't officially a business as well. I'd not set up as a limited company. It was still just sort of me going into schools, doing after school clubs, doing a bit of PPA, that sort of thing. But yeah, started doing other activities. Had a bit of success with that as well. Basketball, gymnastics. Made a lot of mistakes, which I'm sure we'll probably cover some of those shortly. I think I set up the business in 2016. Initially called School of Sport, as you guys know, and we later changed the name because we started offering sort of wraparound and other sort of more childcare provision activities. It felt more suited, if you like. But yeah, set that up in 2016, and then made the decision to leave my role at David Lloyd, which was actually it was a bit of a risk at the time because it had a solid income from all the sort of one-to-one lessons I was doing and the coaching that I was doing there. But I knew that I needed to focus if I wanted the business to go anywhere, I needed to focus my time and energy into this one thing. And I had a couple of close friends around me at the time who I'm still good friends with today, who had their own businesses, and they would say, you should do it. You should, why not? You're only, I think I was 22, I think I was early 20s at the time. So I was still young, no commitments, no house, no children, anything like that. What was the worst that could happen, really? It doesn't work and you go back to coaching. Yeah, put all my time into it, and I'm glad I did. Absolutely glad I did. And then a big shift for me personally, or for us in terms of my professional journey, was when the pandemic happened, which I know was a big shock to a lot of people, and companies. Usually, most companies went one of two ways, but we used that time to really look at our business, and I'd probably say become a more professional business and do everything properly. Whereas prior to that, and like I said at the start of the show about being a bit naive, I started to learn more about the operational side of a business and recruitment and getting the right people in and that sort of thing. And then that's, led us to where we are now, really. Started doing wraparound as well after the pandemic, really. And then that's obviously helped our business and helped with recruitment and getting more permanent team members in. And then that's where we are now.
That's really interesting, right? Really interesting. It's always good on them. We get guests on them. We obviously know you, but I didn't know that full, complete background. And there's lots to touch on there. Just before we dive into the kind of the business side of things, just on the tennis background. So from a tennis point of view, have you done yourself an injustice there? We're actually like a very good player, because there's not many. It's very real tough sport to make it as a pro. So what kind of level were you at there?
Yeah. So I was number one in Lancashire, 10, 11 years, that sort of under 10 age. Played for the county, so I was sort of top 10, top 20 in the country for my age as a junior. So a pretty good standard. I did have ambitions to make it, and I think it's something I reflect on quite a bit, actually, because I'm sure a lot of people have been there where you had ambitions to. I think most of us have ambitions to be a professional athlete, don't we, or be a musician or artist as kids, and then you maybe see people that you knew or that were in your circles that make it, and you have that little bit of reflection, think, it's difficult as a child, and I think that's how I reflect on it now, to know what it takes as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, to know that you've got to put in the extra hours and the extra work. And I think actually reflecting on that and being able to accept that has helped me with my business, because I know that I'm not going to leave any stone unturned with running the business, and I'm going to make sure I put absolutely everything into it make it successful really. But yeah, in terms of the standard, I think I was at a pretty good standard, and I was hoping to make it professionally. But like you said, I think I don't know the stats for tennis, but I know for football, I think it's about 0.01% of kids at academies make it to the Premier League level. And I think 0.5% make it as, in the professional game, which is, and it's probably even lower with tennis, because I think the thing with tennis is, in terms of making a good career and earnings, you really have to be near the top 100 for a period of time to do that. Whereas I think football, because it's a more popular sport, more people watch it. You've got players playing in League Two who are earning really good salaries, really making a really good career. Whereas if you're at a similar level in tennis, you're probably not going to be making a reasonable career out of it long term anyway. So probably even harder, I imagine, to make it to that sort of level in tennis. But yeah, I think it definitely taught me a lot and taught me discipline and the training side of things, and training sort of 3-4 hours a day, and the fitness. And I think that's definitely carried on into my adulthood, if you like, and taught me some good lessons.
And then from an activity point of view at the moment, what is activity still a very important part of your life?
Yeah. I try and go to the gym at least a few times a week. Obviously, I have periods where I'm a little bit up and down, and I've actually taken up paddle a little bit recently. Quite a lot of transferable skills with tennis and paddle. So a lot of the guys I used to play tennis with, we just play paddle now. Training.
It's a paddle league going. There's more.
Yeah.
Paddle's a very popular sport. Still trying to hopefully get a Luke on the court at some point, but there's not many courts around, so it's really difficult to actually get on myself. But it's such a good sport. Really good. I think it's one of the fastest growing sports in the world at the moment.
Yeah, no, I think it is. And although there's not loads of courts at the minute, I've noticed, especially in the last 12 months, there's just courts popping up now, especially around Manchester. I don't know what it's like in the Midlands, but all David Lloyd clubs have, the David Lloyd near me have just put 3 courts in. I think they're building 3 more inside. There's clubs popping up near town. There's another one popping up near the Trafford Centre with 10 courts. And it's definitely, like you said, I think it is the fastest growing sport in the UK, or one else, or in Europe for that matter. And I think it's because it's so sociable. You play with 4 of you, and the thing with that compared to tennis is it's much easier for sort of club players, or maybe beginners, people who've never played tennis. You can go on a paddle court and actually have a rally. Whereas tennis, if you've never played tennis, the ball's bouncing over your head. Like trying to time the ball from the back of the court is such a challenge. I think that's why it's really taken off, actually. So yeah, I play a bit of paddle, a bit of golf in the summer, which I know we spoke about, Paul. Definitely a fair weather golf for those.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Ryan.
100%.
Any rain, a drop of rain, and I'm not even on the course, mate.
Yeah, it's the cold for me, because it's a long game as well, and it's not like an hour. You're out there for 4 hours. And I just don't find it enjoyable when it's like that, to be honest. Need to get over. You have to get over to Spain, really, don't you, or Portugal, if you want to play in the winter.
So from an activity point of view, then now, what are the benefits for you being active and participating in paddle, going to the gym, getting on the course when the weather's decent?
Yeah, I think 2 things that sort of spring to mind, really, the social side of things, and still, as we obviously, you get into adulthood, it's very easy for sort of relationships to drift that you had in your sort of earlier days. So having that regular game of golf or game of paddle with friends that maybe you don't actually see that often, because we've all got busy lives, we all, we might run businesses or have important jobs or have kids. So having that sort of regular sort of contact with friends, I think that's a big thing for me. And then I think the other thing as well, I always notice when I'm looking after my health and my fitness, I perform so much better in work. And I'm just generally probably better to be around because I feel better. So I went on, it was in COVID actually, I went on like a bit of a fitness craze where I got like an online PT, great by the way. And I did like 8-9 weeks of trying to cut my calories, and I ended up losing about 10 kilograms. And Probably lost a bit too much actually, because people thought I looked a bit gaunt in the face, but the changes I actually seen with the business and just with my mindset generally, because I made that shift and really focused on my health. And the guy who trained me, actually, he always says on, you see his sort of posts, is most guys come to me wanting to look better, but then what they actually get from it is they get a promotion at work, or their business starts to take off and grow. And I definitely noticed that in myself with when I really put a lot of focus on what I was eating and my fitness generally.
And Ryan, you've talked about being quite engaged with sports, whether it's tennis, golf, now paddle, for most of your life, it sounds. However, you and your team are working with a lot of children in a variety of environments like wraparound clubs, PE, holidays that aren't necessarily engaged in physical activity or sport. So how do you and your team get them engaged and get them passionate about being active?
I think it's just about opportunities, isn't it? And trying to introduce children to as many different sports as you can. And that's something we really try and do. And I know you just mentioned there, like wraparounds. I think usually most wraparound provisions that you come across in the country are pretty much glorified babysitting, really. It's just a case of get a few games out and let the kids just draw and do what they want. Whereas with our wraparound provision, and I'm sure yours is quite similar, we have a big focus on physical activity. So we have sports coaches that are in there every night providing additional activity, whether it's dodgeball, whether it's hockey, football, gymnastics. We often try and send specialists in as well. If we've got specialist coaches, that's like we've got some specialist dance coaches or gym coaches, and we'll try and send them in. Yeah, I think it's just about opportunities for children and introducing them to those activities. And I think back to when I was young, I was really fortunate. I had a really great upbringing from my parents, and they gave me so many opportunities to get involved in different sports. They took me to football. They took me to the tennis club and introduced me to tennis. And had I not had those opportunities, I may never have explored that activity or that sport, or realized I had a bit of a talent for it. So I think it's about just enabling children to get involved in as many different activities as they can until they find something that they really enjoy and they really love. And I think that's key for lifelong participation as well, and being able to still being involved in sports as adults, really.
Yeah, I think it's a window of opportunity, I think, is the best way to explain it from a wraparound perspective. And for those people that aren't entirely sure what the wraparound is, and it's basically giving in curriculum time before school and after school opportunities, which combined with childcare is actually very impactful. So it's a win from all parties. So school side of things, I mean, every school by 2025 should have a wraparound offer at their school. And from a parent's point of view, obviously from a government perspective, trying to get people into work. So from an economical perspective, huge advantages. And then, as you say, that window of opportunity to give children that may otherwise never have the opportunity to experience activities and a variety of sports. It's just a great opportunity to give them a bit of time to move, a bit of time to explore different sports and activities that they sometimes miss out on. So I think the work that you're doing with the School of Play is a great opportunity for children in your local area to go down a similar path and experience sports. And the primary age is so crucial to make sure they've got that opportunity as they venture into the dreaded teenage years and try and keep engagement going, because it's just, we're preaching to the converted, but just making sure those opportunities exist. So just touch on wraparound in a bit more detail. So where is your perception of wraparound for the next 3 years? Where do you think that is transitioning, and how is it changing? How's that landscape changing?
Yeah, I think I've noticed, even since we've been doing it the last few years, noticing a shift in school sort of mindset on what wraparound looks like. So like I said before, I think notoriously a lot of wraparound provision was just watching over the children, just getting some games out and doing a bit of colouring, and it was a chow mining service as opposed to providing activities. Whereas I've definitely noticed a shift in that. And we've had schools approach us about wraparound. Some we've started delivering at, some not, where they're wanting to make a change because the provider they've had or the provision they've had, it might be being delivered by themselves, doesn't quite meet those standards that they want in terms of providing lots of opportunities, not just sport as well. We do French lessons and language lessons at a couple of our settings, and we do we try and offer food creation activities like cooking classes, and we just really try and give the children loads of different opportunities and make it a really positive and good experience for them, and make them want to actually come back as well. And I'm sure you guys will know, having children, you want your children to enjoy the activities they're doing, not for it to just be a childminding service. So I can definitely see it, especially with the sort of new legislation around, like you said there, around schools needing to have some form of wraparound provision by 2025. I can definitely see that shift happening even more in terms of schools assessing the provision they've got at the minute and seeing if they think it meets the standards that it should, really, in terms of keeping children active and engaged.
I just want to go back to, you made a point earlier, Andy, when you first set up and you got tennis from that leisure environment and saw an opportunity to take it into the school environment, and you offered sessions for free. So some people will probably think that's a bit mad. It's a bit, well, why would you do that? Because you're offering value, and there's got to be an exchange of you offering value and expecting a customer to pay. But I think where you're coming from, from our experience and talking about this ecosystem of products and services and making sure that you have touch points, because if we don't have the touch points, customers, they don't know us, first of all. And you said, they don't know us, they're not going to like us and trust us. So was that your approach to offering those free sessions? Was it a case of, look, we need to be seen, first of all, we need to know who we are or who you are and what you're offering and why we're different. And then the offer comes. So if was that the approach? And then what happened after? So if there's any people that are startups or maybe struggling to engage with schools, what are the benefits as well from the offering those free sessions? So what was the outcome of that?
Yeah, so it was, I think at the time, going back sort of 10 years now, it was I was just offering my service to go in and do some free tennis sessions to the school. And actually tennis it's probably still seen as a little bit of a niche sport. It's not something that you'll see played in schools a lot. And a lot of the schools were interested because it was free. And it just helped get my foot in the door. And then I could build relationships from there, really. And I suppose once you've built relationships with people and you've built that trust, then they're more likely to then spend money with you and buy your services or your product. Yeah, so the actual process really was contacting the schools, offering some free sessions, presuming they were happy, which I think most of the time they were, and the children enjoyed the sessions. I would then have a conversation with the schools about coming back and providing an after-school class or PPA cover and offering something that maybe wasn't provided in the school, which I think as well, I think timing plays an important role, and it's important that I acknowledge that, because I think the time when I started contacting the schools around where I lived, there was no tennis going on anyway, and there wasn't actually loads. Quite a lot of the schools had a lot of opportunities in terms of sort of children's activity providers being in there. I think now it's probably more saturated. There is more competition. So I think timing was important. But yeah, I think it's always a good strategy, especially when you're going into a new market or starting a new business, just to try and build a little bit of a following. Because if you knock on someone's door and try and sell them something for 500 quid or £1,000 straight away, when they don't know who you are, you're probably not going to have much success, if any, really. So yeah, it massively helped building that relationship and being able to then grow the opportunities within that school from there.
Yeah, and definitely building on that trust, isn't it? And then hopefully developing the services you offer that customer along the way.
And like you said, Ryan, when that kind of flourished and your business developed, you were still at relatively quite a young age. Were there any kind of inspirational people or leaders that motivated you along your journey?
Yeah, I think in terms of there's the obvious ones that we probably all listen to on podcasts and read their books. But really, if I was to say someone that I know, and it's really probably only been the last few years actually that I've had a relationship. So with him, it's a good friend called Prashant Duggal. So he's actually a business teacher at a college, but he also comes into our business on a little bit of a consultancy basis. He works with our leadership team every half term on a one-to-one basis, and he's actually a few years younger than me. I think he's 26, but he's just got so much knowledge and wisdom on people and trying to get the best out of people. And he's someone that I've really been able to lean on with my problems and my challenges over the last few years. And he's always been able to provide such great advice and support in that. So he would be someone that would highlight as someone that I've worked directly with. Definitely, yeah.
I think in our network, a lot of people sometimes struggle to find that support for their, they call it SLT or leadership or management teams. So what does that support look like? You said on a half-termly basis, he'll come in and work with your team. What type of things do they go through regards that support and training?
So in terms of on a one-to-one basis, so he'll have usually a termly one-to-one with each person in our leadership team, usually over Zoom, in person if he can. And he's a great listener. He's a great listener, and I think that is an important aspect of a great leader. But he really listens to the problems, and he's a bit of a sounding board to them. But his responses are just so useful, and everyone that sort of comes into contact with him really has nothing but positive words to say about him and the sort of advice that he's given. So yeah, on a one-to-one basis, just offers support really. And I think the key thing is listening to their problems and trying to guide them in the right direction. And so that's his one-to-one sort of advice. And then every now and then, on more of an ad hoc basis really, because obviously he's quite busy in his role, he will come into our business and he'll sit down with myself and our leadership team, and we'll look at our strategy, where we want to go, and he'll again provide guidance on how he feels we can achieve that and what he thinks might work best in certain situations really. So yeah.
And we've had the pleasure of working with quite a few of your colleagues over the last year or so. If we were to ask Ashley or Jess or Sean or Ollie what your leadership style was like, what would they say?
I'd like to think they'll say quite a democratic style. I like to involve people in the sort of the decision-making process and give them a voice and try and listen to them. I know I probably can be a little bit intense at times, but I think that's a positive as well, because I'm sure you guys are probably the same. I want certain standards to be met and certain things to be done. And but yeah, I think definitely I would say I involve them in the process, and I think they feel supported by me. I hope that's the case anyway. But we'd have to ask them. I do send out feedback forms usually twice a year, like a 360 feedback form about myself, and usually it's mostly would probably align with what I've just said there. But yeah, I think as well though, I think they would say that if I need to make a difficult decision, I do, even if it's maybe not one they necessarily agree with at times, but if it's going to benefit the business long term, then I will do that.
And over LinkedIn, a lot of listeners will have seen you posting comments and reviews on certain business books or leadership books. Is there anything that either from that 360 feedback you've had or from someone you've read about, is there anything you're working on at the moment to become a better leader?
Yeah, I think a couple of things I can probably think of at the top of my mind. One would be like improving and really refining all our processes within the business and making sure that we're following through with them and sticking to them, if you like, because ultimately it is my responsibility to hold it, especially the leadership team, but hold everyone accountable to those standards. And then just the other thing I would say really is when I have an idea or when we have an idea, being really clear with the expectations and whose role it is to do what. So I know a little bit of feedback I've had a couple of times is we might be sat in a meeting and I'll just get an idea, or I might come back in the office and have an idea. I'm like, right, let's do that. And I probably sometimes just need to slow down a little bit and give people a little bit more time to process it rather than let's do that now kind of thing. So yeah, I'm definitely working at that because I have ideas constantly that, that I want to implement, but you've got to get the balance between not giving your team, not overloading them with too much and making them feel overwhelmed, which can happen. So yeah, I think definitely I'm trying to work on that to improve my sort of leadership. Really,
it's hard to say no, isn't it? At times, we all have these wonderful ideas and want to go with it and want a team to come on the journey, but yeah, saying no sometimes is very difficult. Is that a challenge that you've always had? Is there a kind of link there between the ambition that you maybe had as a young tennis player as well?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I definitely think it is. And I think just going back to what I said before about my leadership style and how to some people I can probably come across as intense at times. I think that's why, because of I might get those ideas and let's do this, and I just want to do it straight away. But then obviously when I give myself a bit of time and think, right, no, we're working on this at the minute. This is the sort of key focus. I don't want to sort of distract people and take them away from what they're working on and don't want them to feel overwhelmed. But no, I definitely think that comes from a young age. I've always been really competitive. I think a lot of people meeting a lot of people in the network, or a lot of people I meet in the industry in some similar roles and positions have that similar sort of mindset, quite competitive, and you've got that competitive edge really, and hate losing.
What's been your biggest challenge to date from a leadership perspective or from a business point of view?
I think definitely as we've grown. So the last few years really is where we've done most of our growing as a business and had developed a proper team. So pre-pandemic, it was pretty much just myself, and we had some coaches, but it was pretty just much myself and then my former business partner who did most of the work. So following on from the pandemic, the business obviously has grown year on year and we've employed a lot more people. That's been a challenge, going from say 5 to 10 team members to 20 to 30 to 40 plus, and managing that and needing to sort of understand what people respond to and who's going to work well together. And you definitely make a lot of mistakes with that. And then another thing I would say, something I was probably guilty of in the past, is knowing the right time when to promote someone. So I read something a couple of years ago, and it was saying most businesses promote people to the level of their incompetence. And it really just stuck in my mind, because it's definitely something we've done in the past where people are great. They might be a great coach. They might be a great play leader. And then you promote them into a management position, but they've not had the training. They've never done that before. And then they're suddenly in charge of a team of people, and you're surprised when things go wrong. And definitely learning the right time when to promote people and when they're ready to step up and when they want to as well. Because I think a lot of people probably in the moment say, yeah, I want that promotion, when really they might know they're not ready, or they might be really happy in the role that they're doing. So yeah, I think that's definitely been one of my biggest challenges for sure.
What do you do to overcome that? Because it's always tricky. I think in any sector, in a business in particular, you've got people that are passionate and want to grow and develop, but sometimes there's limited opportunities to grow and develop. So how do you combat that, or have you combated that, or is that something you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, I definitely think it's something that we're working on. But I think that the biggest thing I try and do to combat that is try and develop people as much as you can. And we really try and do that now. So whether it's sort of regular training, leadership training, we try and do that sort of at least once every half term, sort of training for a lot of sort of senior people in the business, or people in setting leader roles or coach mentor roles. Really pushing their personal development and including that in their sort of personal development plans that we do. And yeah, little things. We've got an office library. We encourage people to come in, and there's tons of books in there on leadership and management, especially. And that's probably the thing. That's probably the topic that there's the most books on in there. Yeah, I think creating a culture and an environment where it's the norm to progress and learn more and continue to grow, so that when those opportunities do come up and you have someone in mind maybe for that role, they're ready to step into it. So yeah, definitely something we're still working at though.
And your business has gone through pretty rapid growth, like you've mentioned. What would you say the proudest achievement for you so far is?
I'd probably have to say our first Ofsted inspection. We've had subsequent Ofsted inspections. So we've had 3 in total now, all 3 of them. I say we got the equivalent to outstanding. I know it's changed how it's scored for wraparound settings. It's now, or holiday camp settings, it's now met or not met, isn't it? But the actual reports were outstanding, really, if you read the comments. But that first one, the relief, because there's such a build up, and I suppose there's still a little bit of doubt as to whether you're doing the right things and whether Ofsted are going to see that, because you've never had an inspection before. So when we passed that first inspection, it was such a euphoric moment, a big weight off our shoulders as well. And it was such a relief and felt so good, because we had the belief that we're doing the right things. And we always used to communicate to the team, let's treat every day like an Ofsted day, so that we're not surprised when they come in. We're not running around trying to put things in place and make sure those things are already there. So you think you're doing the right things, but there's still always that doubt until you actually get that mark of approval, if you like, from them. And it is such a big thing, isn't it, for providers or for schools? The Ofsted, the word Ofsted, I think it just gives people nightmares, doesn't it? But I tried to be really positive even before it, the day of the inspection, before the inspector came. I just tried to instill as much belief into the team as possible, and tell them how much we believe what they're doing is right, and how confident we are that they're going to pass and be successful in it. And ultimately, we passed it with flying colours, and it went really well. And yeah, so I'd have to say that, to be honest.
Just on that side of thing, because Ofsted is very daunting. It's a daunting word, if that's a lot of people's mindset is along those lines. How do you consistently ensure that your team, especially new people entering the business, are rehearsed on how to answer certain questions, how your settings should look like? What kind of, I guess, the compliance and training side of things, how do you ensure that everyone's constantly up to speed with that?
We cover a little bit of it in the induction process, but I suppose most of it comes once people start, because someone's induction is going to be, they're going to be getting information thrown at them left, right, and centre. So they're just not going to remember all that and retain that information. So we touch on it in the induction process, and then we do regular half-termly training as a full company. And a lot of that, shout out to Ashley as well. She's the person that leads on that, on the safeguarding and compliance side of things. And then we do send regular tests out as well. Again, Ashley sends them out, and it's testing people's knowledge. So it might be 20 questions once every half term or once a month, so that we know where people's gaps in their knowledge are. And often we actually had the conversation, like, because it's an online form, oh, what if they Google it? But I think Sean actually said, if they Google it, they're still actually reading the right answer. So they're gonna be learning something. And then the other thing we do is regular compliance checks at the setting, both from the senior leadership team. Usually at wraparound settings, it's every couple of weeks at each setting. But then we get our setting leaders to do compliance checks as well every week. And within those compliance checks, there is questions that we ask. And then another thing which actually has really helped, which we try and get the setting leaders to use every day, is we call them, they're like revision cards. So they're on like a bit of a lanyard, and there's maybe 40, 50 questions, and it's just like quick fire questions, and it's got the question on the front and the answer on the back, like laminated cards. And there's like a section on safeguarding, there's a section on the company history, there's a section on expected values, behavior, expectations. And we found that they've actually been really useful in helping people retain information, because it's just short, snappy questions, and it's quite visual because there's just one question on each card. It's not like a piece of paper with 15 questions and it's, here, read this. It's definitely, that's really helped actually. That's something that our setting leaders, especially at wraparound and holiday camps, will use quite a lot and quiz the team on quite a lot.
And you mentioned, Ryan, initially when you first started the business, you had a few friends or people you knew of that had their own businesses in other sectors. So are there any of those people that you can look towards and we could probably learn a bit from the sector they're in terms of helping us get more children more active?
Yeah, so I think I had this conversation with Sean actually the other day, and something he said was around like the research involved in the sector. And I would tend to agree with him actually. And he feels that all the sectors are really moving the needle with that in terms of research they're doing. And I know it's something you guys at Aspire do a lot of. We've not really touched the surface with that yet, but I know Sean, that's going to be something that we bring into his role very soon. And obviously with his background in sort of sport, and he's currently doing his masters in, I think, elite youth sport athletes at the minute. And his PhD, should I say. He's been studying for 5 or 6 years that he's been with us. When he finishes that and comes on board full time with us, that's going to be something that he really tries to implement. I think I've heard you say it, Paul, that actually providing that data and being able to show that data to schools is then a benefit on that side of things as well, because it builds a trust and they know that you're making an impact on their children and on the children in the community. So I would definitely agree with Sean on that. And I think as well, something else he mentioned was about like the standardization of coaches, which I know Simsborough are really pushing through at the minute, just to ensure that coaches that are going into schools are qualified as they should be, and they've got the qualifications to be working in the school. A little bit like with wraparound, you've got your Ofsted and you have to have your certain amount of team members that are qualified in early years. There's not probably quite the same with the sports side of things. I would definitely say that, to be honest.
I think that the data point is really important there, Ryan. And it's something that I think we've probably for the last decade now, and tried to really disrupt the market in terms of like the use of data and showcasing the impact that you have as an organisation. And going back to what we spoke about in the very start about offering those sessions to schools for free, but you still need to show value. So there's got to be a transfer of value within a relationship. So if a customer is paying for a service or a product, I don't know, there's probably a few, but I don't know off the top of my head that actually where you have a service and that service lasts for X amount of time. And at the end of that period, you get a report that shows the impact that you have had as an organisation. Now, if we can do that as organisations, not only does it support the businesses that we run, but it supports the sector, because it shows the sector impact. And one of the pods we did recently with Kay back in the YST, and we briefly talked about the importance of, we know our sector has an impact because we're in it day to day. But when someone says, show me the impact, that's where a lot of organisations, I'd probably say 90% of organisations in the sector really struggle to do that. They just don't have a quantitative data. So the qualitative data is sometimes easier to gather, but the hard data is just so important. So I think it's a really good point that you've raised there.
Yeah, and it's definitely something we're going to be sort of focusing on in the coming months and the year. So.
Yeah, just don't go rushing into your next meeting with your leadership team and saying, I've got a great idea. I know Luke mentioned as well about the amount of time that you invest in yourself and your team. Do you have, this could be a tricky one for you, do you have free books, people or podcasts that you could recommend to other listeners?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So I've read a lot in the last couple of years. If I was to say a book, about one, maybe if we do one of each. Books, I'll probably say Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's a leadership book. I'm not sure if either of you two have read that. Basically talks about I'm trying to remember it now. It was a while ago that I read it. I just remember that it was really good. But it basically talks about how I think he studied like the best Fortune 500 companies in America. And I think statistically over like a 20, 30 year period, only about 10 or 15% of them stay there, which is actually really low. When he studied them, he found that the ones that did stay there were the ones that had what he called level 5 leaders. And he delves into what a level 5 leader is in the book. One of the things I can remember is he said, then they won't shy away from making difficult decisions. He said, even if it means dismissing their brother, they would do it. That's the thing that I really remembered from the book. But not that I need to dismiss any family members or anything, but yeah, that's the thing I remember. And then in terms of podcasts, so you probably get this a lot, but I'll go quite specific with it. So I listen a lot to the High Performance podcast, but if I was to give one or two episodes, I would definitely say the Toto Wolff episode, who's most people probably know is the Mercedes Formula One team principal. And he's, in terms of leadership, that was a great episode. Love listening to that one. I've listened to that back loads. And then another one was a guy called Steve Salis, who probably not as many people know as much, but he used to be a head teacher, which I suppose is quite relevant in our sector, really. So he used to be a deputy head teacher at a high school that was like in special measures. And then he now works in football, and he works a lot with Premier League clubs and goes in and works with their teams and their coaches, about around stuff, a lot of stuff around people and leadership kind of thing as well. And then what was the other thing? People. Again, I'd probably say a sort of leadership expert, if you like, that I listen to a lot is Simon Sinek. I'm sure both of you are really familiar with him. Read quite a few of his books, but I think his work is really impactful, and his big thing is start with your why, and leaders eat last, and focusing on people. So I definitely recommend him as someone to follow on YouTube and social media and read his books and that sort of thing.
Brilliant. And then quick fire, last question, Ryan, the $1 million question.
Yeah.
What one thing do organizations in our sector need to do to crack the active code and get more children more active more often?
I think, again, this is something that's come up with Sean actually in the past, and something he says a lot is getting children involved in more lifestyle sports that can potentially carry through as adults. Because he was saying how when you just playing football and it's every sort of Saturday morning, and as you get into an adult or your teenager, I think you mentioned before, Paul, about how a lot of people drop off a lot of children drop off sport when they get to those teenage years. But if we get children involved in those lifestyles, I think paddle's a good example. It's a very social sport and something that you're probably more likely to play into adulthood, as opposed to, say, Sunday league or whatever. A lot of people drop off from doing that. So yeah, I would probably say that, really.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for your time, Brian. Really appreciate it. It's a really
No worries.
fascinating episode. Lots of things for people to take away from that. It's been, from a personal point of view, it's been great to listen to your history, even though you're still in your 20s. It makes you feel very old.
Yeah, I'm just in my 30s
Oh,
now.
just in your 30s. Just
well,
great.
31.
Give it away
31.
now. You should have just gone along with that.
Yeah. It's all right.
No, thanks so much for your time. And take care.
No
and
worries.
speak
And I
soon.
appreciate being on. Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. See you later.
To subscribe to the pod, search for the Active Code on your podcast app. Let's work together to get more people more active more often.